around like 150, 100, something around there, because I want the kick to be gone, but I also don't want the tone of the snare to be gone.
Right, yeah,
and
you gotta have a little bit of that low end in the snare.
Right, and it's less kick snare in the two channels, it's kick overhead. So the lower channel is just the kick, really super simple. Find that fundamental, could be at 60, could be at 80, depending on who it is.
Do most beatboxers get that low?
Because you're not using your voice, you're just using the sub pressure. I mean, I'll try it here. I don't know how it's going to work on this, but you're not really using your voice at all, which again, I think equalizes the playing field. So, you don't have to be, your body or your body type doesn't define whether you can beatbox or not.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so the higher channel is the snare, overhead, because I want to get the hi-hat, I want to get the crashes, I want to get the cymbals, I want to get the toms, but I don't want the mud of anything else.
Right.
So usually I'll find the tone of the snare, which might be around 200-ish, and then I'm going to want to bump again around like 3.5K to get like the crack of the snare,
sure.
and then, I'll probably shelf 8 or 10K and above to get that air or that sizzle.
Sure. Are you dipping out also like 400, 500 to get rid of some honkiness?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably getting rid of 400 on every channel if I can.
Oh yeah, it's your anti 400.
Yeah. It just depends. I feel like it depends on the room, depends on the group, but usually I'm going to find mud between 300 and 500. I'm going to find harshness around 800. There's going to be something gross around 2K.
Yeah. Yep. It's like any voice, right?
Yeah. And these are basic
and you basically
rules.
you do this with dynamic mics, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
It's like the way to go for beatbox.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean these numbers are not hard and fast rules. They're just basic starting points. I mean the best advice I can give you is something that Tony tells me over and over again, which I'm still getting better at, which is mix with your ears, not with your eyes.
Yeah, sure.
And also take a minute to listen to what's going on, as opposed to just turning things up and down where you quote know it's supposed to boost or cut.
Totally. Yeah. Sage advice for anybody in audio.
Mm-hmm. I definitely try to cut more than I boost because you end up getting a lot of buildup. And I'm lucky that most of the groups I work with don't work with wedge or stage monitors. They work with in-ears, like earbuds in their ears, so I don't have to worry so much about that kind of feedback or anything.
Sure.
But still, you want to make sure you don't get too much buildup.
Can you do like when I mixed beatbox most recently? I was adding a lot of sub to the low end. I was like there are plugins like RBass or Max Bass or like all these kinds of plugins that add synthesized sub harmonic frequencies. Are you able to do that live? Does that exist? Is that a thing?
There are some groups that use octave, and what they'll do is they'll octave down their bass and kind of blend that in for that sub harmonic, and then sometimes even put that octave on the lower kick channel of the drums. I don't generally do that, only because the board that I use most is the Allen & Heath SQ5, which doesn't have an octave, so I have to buy an external pedal, and I don't do that as often.
Mm-hmm. I have an octave pedal as a bass player. It's fun. Yeah. It's good to get down there.
They're great. They're fun. Yeah. I feel like a lot of female identifying basses will use that octave pedal sometimes. It was really a big thing 10, 15 years ago. I feel like it's... Again, it depends on your genre, because again, a cappella is an instrumentation, not a genre. And if you want that more synthetic EDM-y sound, it definitely works.
Right.
If you're looking for something more vocal and less affected, you might use it to blend it in for that like sub-harmonic frequencies like you're talking about, that like, kind of vibe that you feel more than you hear.
Yeah.
The groups that I'm working with right now generally don't use the octave though.
Cool, man. Yeah, so tell me a bit more about what it's like working with this mentor of yours.
So he has a great workshop that I will totally plug here. He calls it It Sounds Muddy. He lives in Denver, Colorado, and he'll bring like 5 or 6 engineers or aspiring engineers out to Denver. You pay to get out there. I think you stay at a local hotel, and he teaches you 4 or 5 different mixing boards, and he has a whole bunch of multi-tracked live recordings of groups like Take 6 and The Real Group and these other really big groups that you learn to mix, and he kind of goes through piece by piece. All right, here's how you set up your channel. channels, and he has a very specific way of, I have my basic channels here, and then on the right side I have my reverb returns, and I have the sends here, and these are green and these are yellow, and I have it's a very, very basic template. And so I'll bring you out and kind of go through all the different parts of it. Everything from learning the actual gear to understanding the physics and the techniques of what he's doing, to the business side of it and how to be an entrepreneur, as well as just how to be a good engineer as a person. Mm-hmm. One of his favorite things that he talks about is that by the time the band gets there, you should be in their green room eating their food. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that by the time the band gets there, if you're just kind of hanging out and eating their food, they'll be at ease because you're at ease. And so you got to stay calm and collected, really, no matter what. Anytime anyone says anything, sure, I can do that. No problem. The more flustered you get, the more flustered they're going to get, and they're paying you to deal with this stuff, so you don't have to. So they don't have to.
Yeah, yeah. Good live sound engineers just keep you calm. Mm-hmm. Also in the studio is the truth, like problem solvers, and we just like, while we're solving problems, just like, hey, just everything's cool. Just working on something real quick. Yeah.
One of the other things that I love about Tony is that he gave me a playlist of 3 or 4 songs to tune a room with. Obviously, if you're tuning a room or a studio or anything, it's important to use songs that you know the mix of, right, so that you know what sounds right.
It's kind of like mastering, right?
Yeah, definitely. But there are specific songs that he recommended I get to know on different systems because they have particularly bad mid-range. There's a Kenny Loggins song called Leap of Faith and a Seal song called Crazy that both have really wonky, honky mid-ranges, and if you can make that song sound good, your room is in tune.
Cool. So you specifically use like a song that has like an issue. Mm-hmm. Usually, what I would think of is usually to pick a song that you know really well and has a pretty balanced, right, like frequency, spectrum. So usually, what I'll do is I'll take these 2 songs and I'll start with them. I use one Kenny Loggins one. I use to figure out where my crossover is going to be. Where the sub ends and the tops begin. Because you don't want all the speakers having all the frequencies, because that's going to be muddy. And the whole idea of his system is everything is super, super clear without any mud at all, which you get 6, 7, 10, 15, 20 vocalists on stage. It can that honky wonky, like 250 to 500 buildup can get really big. And I'm giving a very, very wide band because I don't want to give specific frequencies because I don't want people to, think, oh, if it's not here, then I'm cool. So it's kind of like almost like top-down mixing, where it's like, like an auxiliary that has like a notch at like 400, 500 hertz, and then like you don't really have to carve that out as much from each individual vocalist. Yeah, I definitely want to go in and tune the mains before I even touch anybody. Yeah. Because there's going to be certain nodes or certain standing waves in the room that like, every time they hit that B flat, the whole room will resonate. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, which is cool, but not super helpful all the time. B-flat
is a typical one, actually. That's an interesting point. Someone who's like played in halls. I don't know why that is.
Maybe because of the dimensions of the room.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Awesome. How big is the a cappella community? Like how big is this scene?
I mean, it's ever growing. I wish I had stats for you. Most colleges have a couple of groups, and because there are more groups in colleges, there are, more and more groups that are forming after college. High school a cappella has become a really big thing too. You heard of the movie Pitch Perfect?
Yes.
So Pitch Perfect is based on a true story.
I have not seen it though. I will. Okay. I will see
you still have time. So it's based on a true story. It's written the book called Pitch Perfect: The Quest for A Cappella Glory by a guy named Mickey Rapkin, and the Barden Bellas are based on a group from the University of Oregon called DeVisi, and the Troublemakers are based on a group from Tufts called the Beelzebubs. There's a bunch of other characters, a bunch of other things going on, and that competition is a real competition called the International Championship of Collegiate A Cappella, or ICCA. It is not the ICCAs, and it is not the ICAs. I've been yelled at many times. And so it's a bracket competition, almost like a March Madness kind of thing. all over the country and even internationally. And the finals are in New York City, either at the Beacon Theater or Carnegie Hall or Lincoln Center, one of these great halls. Wow. And they also have a competition called ICHSA, the International Championship of High School A Cappella, which is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And there are different, reality TV shows that deal with high school a cappella, and it's becoming more of a thing. They recently came out with something called, I believe it's the ICAO, the International Championship A Cappella Open. Colloquially, it's just called the ACA Open, which the finals are at Carnegie Hall, which is very, very cool. And it's specifically for post-collegiate. So it's a competition with a cash prize for people outside of the collegiate, outside of the scholastic space. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 5 to 10 years there became a middle school championship. So I think it's getting younger and younger, which makes the a cappella world stronger and stronger because there's a feeder system. Whereas opposed to, you're in college, it's the first time you ever sung a cappella. A lot of times these college groups are even, what's the word? Not drafting, but recruiting from specific high schools. So there are high schools that are known to be fantastic.
Wow,
groups.
So it's like turning into a whole system.
Oh, yeah. And I know a lot of people who will choose colleges based on their a cappella groups.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Come a very, very long way.
Well, it's super niche down, but I think it's a very impassioned people within the niche.
Yeah.
Both audience and singers.
Very passionate, and I feel like it's becoming more and more like a sport and less. I feel like there's a bit of a divergence happening between people who are super into competition versus people who are like, I don't want to compete, I just want to showcase. And
where do you fall in that?
Depends on the day. I like competition. I think competition kind of pushes you to move forward, but at the same time, there are certain risks that you won't take in competition because they might not work as well. If you showcase, you can try weirder things because it's not like, oh, I spent all this money and all this time trying to get to this competition and now I don't have anything to show for it. I like the idea of showcasing because, it's pretty much a competition without scores at the end.
Nice. Well, so you were telling me before we got on the mic that you were, like me, we were both in Russia over the past year, doing some music. Tell me about what you were doing.
So Moscow has the largest a cappella competition in the world. Last I checked, I believe it was 126 groups from 84 different countries.
Wow,
insane. And pretty much what they do is, if you have some YouTube videos of a well put together group, you go and you apply, and they will fly your entire group out to Russia for free. Wherever you are in the world, they will put you up for about 2 weeks in a very nice hotel for free. You get dinner every night, and they have about 60 stages all over the city. And they're just kind of on street corners, on rooftops, kind of all over, like an urban sprawl kind of thing. Each one of these stages has a digital mixing board, a full array of wireless handheld microphones, wedge monitors, everything for you. And it's amazing. They give out millions of dollars in prizes.
Wow.
The group that I work with, Six Appeal, was very, very happy to. This year, they won the Moscow Festival for the second year in a row, which comes with quite a hefty prize.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And you were engineering the whole thing.
Yeah. So they brought me on last year. They didn't have a standalone engineer. They kind of, were mixing on an iPad off stage, or just letting, they have engineers at every stage. But sometimes the language barrier is hard to tell them what you want, especially if you have a specific sound. This group has been touring full time for at least a decade. And also there's everything from like full 30-piece choirs to like a solo singer or like a beatbox duet. There's all these different kinds of genres within a cappella. And so I feel like the vocal band genre, which is what Six Appeal is, they're more like a rock band than anything else. There's a drummer, there's a bass player, and then you have your various other components. Isn't always the easiest thing to mix on the fly if you've never heard them. So they won last year, and they wanted to come back and go bigger next year. So they brought me on to be their engineer. It was something like there's like 3 or 4 15-minute sets a day for about 2 weeks all over the city. So pretty much you're waking up